Right now, somewhere in your phone, there is a number counting down. You can't see it. Nobody can. But it's there. If you live to be about 82, you will have lived exactly
30,000
30,000
days.
days. Not 30,000 years. Days. And you've probably already spent close to a third of them. Sit with that for a second. 30,000 sunrises. That's it. That's the whole show. It sounds impossibly small once you say it out loud, and yet almost nobody thinks in these units. You think in years, in decades, in someday. Your ancestors didn't have that luxury. They thought in days because days were often all they could count on. Here's where it gets strange. For most of human history, 30,000 days wasn't even a fantasy. It was a fairy tale. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY studied hunter-gatherer societies and found that infant mortality alone could claim nearly half of all children before adulthood. Half. Before you'd even learn to think about your own mortality, the coin flip had already happened. Life expectancy at birth for most of human existence hovered somewhere between 25 and 35 years. Not because people's bodies gave out early, but because the world was lethal in 1,000 small, sudden ways. So why does this matter to you? Scrolling through your feed with central heating, antibiotics, and a refrigerator full of food? Because your brain doesn't know any of that changed. Your brain is still running software built for a 25-year lifespan. It still treats threats like they're urgent, treats scarcity like it's real, treats later like it might not come. And now you've handed that same ancient brain 30,000 days instead of 10,000, and it has no idea what to do with the extra time. This is the reframe. You are not living a long life by accident. You are living an unnaturally long life, wrapped around a mind that was calibrated for a short one. And that mismatch explains more about your daily anxiety, your procrastination, and your restlessness than almost anything else. Think about how you actually spend a normal day. You wake up. You check your phone within minutes, sometimes seconds. You commute, or you don't. You work for 8 or 9 hours, most of which don't feel meaningful in the moment. You eat something you didn't cook slowly enough to enjoy. You scroll for 2 or 3 hours you'll never fully account for. You sleep. Repeat. Now multiply that by 30,000. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent years studying how people actually experience time versus how they remember it. And one of his findings should unsettle you a little. Your memory doesn't store duration. It stores peaks and endings. Which means a week that felt like nothing while you were living it can vanish from your memory entirely, even though you were fully, technically alive for all 7 of those days. You can lose weeks. You can lose months. Not to tragedy, to sameness. Here's a question. How many of your last 100 days can you actually recall in any detail? Not roughly remember happened, but actually recall, like a scene you could describe? For most people, it's a shockingly small number. Maybe 5, maybe 10. The rest just blur into a gray average called normal life. And normal life, it turns out, is where days go to disappear. This is not a guilt trip. It's biology. Your brain is a prediction machine, and prediction machines get lazy around repetition. Neuroscientists have a name for this. It's related to neural habituation, where familiar, repeated experiences produce less and less neural activity over time. The 10th time you drive the same route to work, your brain barely bothers to render it. It's already seen the movie. This is efficient. It's also the reason time feels like it speeds up as you get older. You're not perceiving less time. You're encoding less of it. Now here's where the ancient and the modern collide in a way that should actually change how you live. Hunter-gatherer life, brutal and short as it was also relentlessly novel. Every day required new decisions. Where's the food today? Is that a threat? Has the weather shifted? There was no autopilot, because autopilot got you killed. Novelty wasn't a luxury back then. It was survival, which means the very thing that made prehistoric life dangerous is the same thing that made it, day for day, more vividly remembered. You've essentially inherited the opposite problem. Your environment is safe enough to run entirely on autopilot, and your brain, given the option, will take it every single time. Comfort and repetition feel like the reward for surviving. But to the part of your brain that encodes memory, comfort and repetition are functionally invisible. You are trading vividness for safety, and you didn't even sign the contract. It just happened, one Tuesday at a time. There's a study worth knowing here. The psychologist Mark Whitman has researched what's sometimes called duration dilation. the finding that emotionally intense or novel experiences are remembered as having lasted longer than routine ones, even when the clock time was identical. 2 weeks of a new experience, a first trip somewhere unfamiliar, a first year in a new city, will occupy more space in your memory, and therefore more space in your sense of a life lived, than 2 years of routine. This is not a metaphor. It's how your brain literally allocates storage. So if you only have 30,000 days, and most of them are at risk of blurring into a handful of gray, forgettable weeks, then the real question isn't how to get more days. You can't. The real question is how many of the days you already have are going to actually count. Count in the sense that you'll remember them. Count in the sense that, decades from now, some version of you will be able to point to that stretch of time and say, something happened there. This doesn't require quitting your job or moving to another continent, though it can. It can be smaller than that. A new route walked instead of the familiar one. A conversation that goes past the surface. A skill you're bad at, on purpose, because being bad at something new wakes the brain up in a way that being good at something old never will. Novelty, even in small doses, is the closest thing you have to more time. Not literally, but in the only currency your memory actually accepts. Here's the twist your ancestors never had to face. They didn't need to manufacture urgency. Their world manufactured it for them, constantly, violently, without asking permission. You live in the first version of human life secure enough to forget it's finite. 30,000 days sounds like scarcity when you first hear it. It's actually the opposite. It's the first real chance in the history of your species to spend that number on purpose instead of just surviving toward it. So go back to that number counting down, invisible, somewhere in the architecture of your life. You can't see it, and you can't stop it, and honestly, neither could anyone who came before you. But for the first time in 100,000 years of human history, you get to choose what fills the days instead of just enduring them. 30,000 days isn't a deadline. It's the most time any human has ever reliably had. What you do with the ones you have left, starting with this one, is the only part of the equation that was ever actually yours.